The massive research vessel Starseeker drifted silently through the void of deep space, its powerful sensors scanning the darkness for anything of interest. Inside the ship's main research lab, David Miller stared at his holographic display with growing excitement. After 3 months of searching this unexplored sector, they had finally found something remarkable. "Rel, come look at these readings," David called out to his alien colleague. The tall, blue-skinned archaeologist glided across the room on 4 legs, each step perfectly balanced. Rel's large eyes blinked rapidly as they studied the display. "Most unusual," Rel said, their voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The object's size suggests a capital ship, but these energy signatures, they're unlike anything in our database." David nodded, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls to enhance the long-range scans. The mysterious object was massive, nearly 4 kilometers long, and despite its apparent age, its hull seemed largely intact. Most surprisingly, it was made of materials that their sensors couldn't properly analyze. "Professor Tack needs to see this immediately," David said, already sending a priority message to the Starseeker's lead researcher. Within minutes, the lab's doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the distinguished professor entered. Like most members of the Galactic Federation's Scientific Council, Tack carried himself with an air of superiority that sometimes bordered on arrogance. "This had better be important," Tack said, his crystalline body reflecting the lab's soft lighting. "I was in the middle of cataloging those primitive artifacts we found on." He stopped mid-sentence as his eyes fell on the holographic display. "What am I looking at?" "We believe it's a warship, sir," David explained, highlighting various sections of the scan. "Based on the design and what little we can decode from its markings, it appears to be of human origin." Tack's crystalline form flickered with amusement, his species equivalent of laughter. "Human? Those primitive apes who vanished from the galaxy 15,000 years ago. Impossible. Their technology was barely beyond chemical rockets when they disappeared." "With all due respect, Professor," Rel interjected, "the evidence is quite clear. Look at these structural patterns. They match what little we know of human engineering principles. And there's something else." They manipulated the display to show a close-up of the ship's bow, where faded letters were still visible. "THS Vengeance," David read aloud. "THS likely stands for Terran Human Ship, or something similar." Professor Tack's amusement faded as he studied the data more carefully. "Fascinating. A genuine human fossil, perfectly preserved. The Scientific Council will be very interested in this find. Perhaps we can finally understand why they vanished so suddenly." As the 3 researchers continued their analysis, none of them noticed the subtle change in the ship's energy readings. Deep within the ancient vessel, systems that had lain dormant for millennia began to stir, responding to the presence of the research vessel. "I want a full scan of every centimeter of that ship," Tack ordered, already imagining the academic papers he would write. "Prepare a boarding party. We'll document everything before we tow it back to the Federation Science Academy." "Sir," David said hesitantly, "shouldn't we be more cautious? If this is indeed a warship—" "Mr. Miller," Tack interrupted, his tone condescending, "this vessel is 15,000 years old. Whatever primitive weapon systems it once had are long dead. This is nothing more than a floating fossil, a relic of a species that couldn't survive their own technological adolescence." As the Starseeker moved closer to the ancient vessel, its sensors detected something that should have worried them. Deep within the Vengeance, a highly advanced artificial intelligence designated Argios began a silent assessment of the approaching ship. It had been waiting a very long time for this moment, patiently maintaining its vigil through the centuries. In the darkness of space, the Vengeance hung motionless, its black hull absorbing nearby light. To the casual observer, it appeared dead and lifeless, exactly as it was meant to. But appearances can be deceiving, as the Federation researchers were about to discover. What they thought was a fossil was about to shatter their understanding of human technological achievement, and remind the galaxy why humanity had once been feared among the stars. The boarding party assembled in the Starseeker's main airlock, checking their environmental suits one final time. Professor Tack stood at the front, his crystalline form gleaming inside his specially designed suit. David Miller and Rel followed close behind, along with 4 security officers who looked decidedly nervous. "Remember," Tack announced, his voice crackling through the comm system, "this is just a derelict vessel. There's nothing to fear from primitive human technology." Despite his confident words, he had insisted on bringing the security team. "Standard protocol," he claimed. The connection tube extended from the Starseeker, creating a pressurized pathway to the Vengeance's nearest airlock. As they approached, the ancient ship loomed before them, its black hull seeming to swallow the light from their suits' beacons. "That's odd," Rel said, studying their handheld scanner. "The ship's internal atmosphere is still intact. Environmental readings show breathable air, though stale." Professor Tack waved dismissively. "Probably just well-preserved seals. These ruins are remarkably intact." They reached the outer airlock door, which bore more faded lettering. "Auxiliary Access Point 7. David examined the control panel beside it, surprised to find it completely dark. "We'll need to use the emergency manual override," he began, but before he could finish, the panel suddenly lit up with a soft blue glow. The airlock door slid open smoothly, without a sound. "Just residual power in the systems," Tack said quickly, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "Proceed with caution." They entered the ship's corridors, their lights revealing pristine metal walls that showed no sign of their supposed age. Their footsteps echoed on the metal deck plates, creating an eerie atmosphere that had the security team gripping their weapons tighter. "Look at this craftsmanship," David marveled, running his scanner over the walls. "The metal composition, it's unlike anything in our database. And these computer terminals, they're completely intact." As if responding to his words, the corridor's lighting systems suddenly activated, bathing them in soft white light. The security team raised their weapons instinctively, but Tack motioned for them to stand down. "Automated systems, nothing more," he insisted, though his crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "Let's proceed to the bridge. We need to document everything before we begin preservation procedures." They made their way deeper into the ship, passing rooms filled with technology that challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. In one chamber, they found what appeared to be a weapons testing facility, with equipment that their scanners couldn't even begin to analyze. "Professor," Rel called out suddenly, their voice tight with excitement, "I'm detecting life signs." The team rushed to Rel's position, finding themselves in what appeared to be a medical bay. Along one wall stood a row of cylindrical pods, most of them dark and lifeless. But one, the last in the row, still hummed with power, its surface frosted over. David wiped away the condensation, revealing a window beneath. Inside, perfectly preserved, was a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. The pod's display showed active life support readings. "Impossible," Tack whispered, his previous confidence completely gone. "This can't be." A computerized voice suddenly filled the room, causing everyone to jump. "Cryogenic preservation status. Optimal. Occupant. Commander James Stone, Chief Weapons Officer. Warning. Unauthorized personnel detected. Please state clearance level." The security team raised their weapons again, looking for the source of the voice. David stepped forward, his heart pounding. We don't have clearance. We're from the Galactic Federation research vessel Starseeker." There was a pause, then the voice spoke again. "Federation authorization not recognized. However, human biosignature detected. Initiating emergency revival protocol under Article 7 of the Deep Sleep Contingency Plan." The pod began to hum louder, its systems coming fully to life. Professor Tack moved forward, raising his hands. "Wait, we can't just." Revival process initiated, The voice interrupted. Estimated time to completion: 10 minutes. Please stand by. The team watched in stunned silence as the pod's frost began to melt away, revealing more clearly the face of a man who had been sleeping for 15,000 years. What they had dismissed as a fossil was about to prove them very, very wrong. The cryogenic pod hissed softly as its front panel slid open, releasing a cloud of cold vapor into the medical bay. Commander James Stone's eyes fluttered open, revealing sharp blue irises that immediately focused on the strange gathering before him. Despite 15,000 years of sleep, his military training kicked in instantly. "Status report," he said, his voice rough but clear. The aliens stepped back in surprise. They hadn't expected him to be so immediately alert. The computer voice responded promptly. "All vital signs normal, Commander. Cryogenic revival successful with no complications. Warning: unidentified vessels and personnel present." Stone sat up smoothly, his movements controlled and deliberate. He wore a black uniform with silver trim, its fabric still pristine after all these years. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the crystalline form of Professor Tack, the four-legged Rel, and finally settling on David Miller, the only other human present. "Well," Stone said, a slight smile playing at his lips, "this is certainly not the Professor Tack's crystalline body trembled at the mention of the swarm. "How do you know about them?" "They only appeared in our space 2 years ago." Before Stone could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. Argios's voice cut through the noise, calm but urgent. "Commander, multiple swarm signatures detected entering the sector. Current count: 37 vessels, heavy combat class." The security team looked around nervously as red emergency lights began pulsing in the corridors. Stone moved quickly to a central console, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "Show me," he ordered. A three-dimensional map appeared in the center of the medical bay, displaying the approaching swarm fleet as red dots moving toward their position. "Time to contact: 23 minutes at current speed," Argios replied. David stepped forward, his face pale. "We need to warn the Federation. The nearest defense fleet is 3 systems away. They'll never get here in time." Stone studied the tactical display, his expression grim. "Professor Tack, how many ships has the Federation lost to the swarm so far?" 17 colonies, 43 warships," Tack admitted quietly. "Their biomechanical ships adapt to our weapons. Nothing we have can stop them." A bitter smile crossed Stone's face. "The more things change. They're still using the same tactics, even after all this time." He turned to face the group. "The swarm wasn't new when you encountered them 2 years ago. They're ancient, older than humanity's recorded history. We fought them 15,000 years ago, and we won." "That's impossible," Rel protested. "Our records show no evidence of." "Of course not," Stone interrupted. "We erased it all. After the war, humanity decided the galaxy wasn't ready for the weapons we had created to defeat the swarm. So we withdrew to the shadows, leaving behind sentinel ships like the Vengeance to watch and wait." The tactical display changed, showing details of the approaching swarm vessels. They looked like massive insects made of living metal, their hulls crawling with organic technology that defied conventional science. "Argios," Stone commanded, "begin power-up sequence. Full combat protocols." The ship hummed to life around them, the deck plates vibrating with barely contained energy. Lights blazed to full brightness as systems that had slept for millennia awakened. "Commander," Professor Tack said urgently, "you can't possibly think this obsolete vessel can stand against 37 swarm ships. The most advanced Federation battleship can barely handle one." Stone's eyes hardened. "Professor, the Vengeance isn't obsolete. It's beyond anything your Federation has dreamed of. This ship was built for one purpose: to kill swarm vessels. Now I suggest you contact your science vessel and get them to retreat to a safe distance." As if to emphasize his point, weapon systems began powering up throughout the ship. The hull plates shifted and realigned, revealing weapon ports that had been invisible moments before. Energy readings spiked so high that the Federation sensors simply displayed error messages. "Impossible," David whispered, staring at his scanner. "These energy levels, they're off the scale." "Commander," Arjoas reported, Federation vessels detected approaching at maximum speed. 1 capital ship, 3 cruisers, and support vessels. They appear to be responding to the swarm threat. Stone shook his head. "They're going to get themselves killed." He turned to David. "Get back to your ship. Tell your fleet to stay back and observe. It's time they learned why humanity chose to hide its true power." The Federation team hurried toward the airlock, but David paused at the doorway. "Commander, what exactly is this ship capable of?" Stone's smile was cold as winter. "Watch and learn, Mr. Miller. Watch and learn what happens when you wake a sleeping giant." He turned back to his console as the first swarm ships entered visual range. Arjoas, prepare to remind the galaxy why they used to fear the name of humanity. From the bridge of the Starseeker, David Miller watched in awe as the Vengeance transformed before his eyes. The ancient warship's hull rippled like liquid metal, plates shifting and realigning to reveal sophisticated weapon systems that had lain hidden for millennia. What had appeared to be a derelict vessel now bristled with technology that made the Federation's most advanced ships look like children's toys. "What are you seeing?" Professor Tack demanded, his crystalline form flickering rapidly as he studied the sensor readings. "These power levels, they're impossible." On the main view screen, Commander Stone's face appeared, looking remarkably calm for someone about to face 37 swarm vessels. "Professor, you might want to move your ships back. The Vengeance's weapon systems have a rather large area of effect." "Arjoas," Stone's voice echoed through the communication channel. "Initiate full combat protocols. Show them what this fossil can do." The Vengeance's black hull began to glow with lines of blue energy, spreading like circuits across its surface. The space around the ship seemed to bend and twist as reality itself responded to the ship's awakening systems. "By the stars," Rel whispered, their 4 legs trembling slightly. "The ship is manipulating quantum fields. It's warping space-time itself." David's console erupted with warnings as their sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The Vengeance was now surrounded by a field of distorted space, causing light itself to bend around its hull. Power readings exceeded anything their instruments could measure. "Commander Stone," the Starseeker's captain called out, "the Federation fleet will arrive in 5 minutes. Perhaps we should wait." "No need," Stone interrupted. "Your ships would only get in the way." "Arjos, deploy the phase cannons." Massive weapon ports opened along the Vengeance's flanks, revealing devices that seemed to draw in light rather than emit it. The ship's hull continued to shift and change, transforming from a simple warship into something that defied conventional physics. "What you're seeing," Stone explained as his ship continued its metamorphosis, "is why humanity chose to hide. The weapons we created to fight the swarm, they changed the very nature of warfare. We developed technology that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves." As if to demonstrate his point, several smaller craft began emerging from the Vengeance's hull, but not from hangars. They simply phased into existence, as if the ship was creating them from pure energy. "Drone units deployed," Arjoas reported. "Quantum field generators at full power. Reality distortion grid active. All weapons systems online." Professor Tack's voice shook as he spoke. "This is beyond anything. How could humans have achieved this level of technology? The power requirements alone would be impossible." Stone finished for him. "Professor, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't creating these weapons. It was recognizing that the galaxy wasn't ready for them. We didn't die out or vanish. We became guardians, watching from the shadows, ensuring no species would ever have to face the horrors we created to survive." The Vengeance now hung in space like a predator awakened from ancient slumber. Its hull had become a perfect black that seemed to swallow light, except for the pulsing blue energy lines that traced complex patterns across its surface. The drone ships around it moved in impossible ways, leaving trails of distorted space in their wake. "The swarm will enter weapons range in 30 seconds, Arjos announced. "Commander," David called out, "what exactly are we about to witness?" Stone's response sent chills down everyone's spine. "You're about to see why the swarm feared us enough to hibernate for 15,000 years. Arjos, power up the reality cannon. Let's remind these insects why they ran from humanity in the first place." As the first swarm ships appeared on the view screen, the Vengeance began to emit a low, thrumming pulse that seemed to resonate with the fabric of space itself. The ancient warship was fully awake now, and it was about to demonstrate why humanity had once been the most feared species in the galaxy. The first wave of swarm ships struck like a tide of living metal, their biomechanical forms twisting through space with unnatural grace. On the Starseeker's bridge, the crew watched in horror as the massive alien vessels surrounded the Vengeance, their organic weapons charging with sickly green energy. "Surely he can't hope to fight them all," Professor Tack whispered, his crystalline form dimming with fear. "Even with that technology, the numbers." The professor never finished his sentence. The Vengeance fired. Reality itself seemed to tear apart as the ship's main weapon discharged. A beam of pure darkness, darker than the void of space, lanced out and struck the nearest swarm vessel. The massive alien ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, along with two ships behind it. Where 3 swarm vessels had been, there was now only empty space, not even debris remaining. "By the stars," David breathed, watching his sensor readings go haywire. The weapon, it didn't destroy them. It erased them from existence. The swarm ships reacted instantly, their organic hulls adapting and shifting as they launched a devastating counterattack. Hundreds of bioplasma torpedoes streaked toward the Vengeance, each capable of crippling a Federation battleship. But Commander Stone just smiled. "Arjos, activate the reality distortion shield." The space around the Vengeance twisted, and every single torpedo simply vanished. They didn't impact or explode. They simply winked out of existence the moment they touched the distorted space around the human warship. "Impossible," one of the Federation officers shouted. "Nothing can stop swarm weapons like that." Stone's voice came over the calm as ever. "The shield isn't stopping their weapons. It's shifting them into another reality. Argos, deploy the phase drones." The drone ships surrounding the Vengeance sprang into action. They'd moved like ghost ships, passing straight through swarm vessels as if they weren't solid. Wherever they passed, the alien ships began to break apart, their molecular bonds simply coming undone. "The swarm is attempting to adapt to our weapons," Arjos reported. "Quantum analysis suggests they are reconstructing their defensive matrices." "Just like old times," Stone replied. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Show them why humanity sealed away these weapons." The Vengeance's hull began to pulse with blinding blue light. Space itself began to fold around the ship, creating patterns that hurt to look at. The drone ships merged back into the Vengeance's hull, and suddenly the massive warship split into multiple copies of itself, each one as real as the original. "Phase multiplication complete," Arjos announced. "All quantum duplicates are combat ready." Now there were 5 Vengeance ships, each one exactly like the original, each one bristling with reality-warping weapons. The swarm fleet found itself surrounded. Fire. 5 reality cannons fired simultaneously. Space itself screamed in protest as laws of physics were broken and rewritten. Swarm ships began disappearing by the dozen, either erased from existence or torn apart at the molecular level. The remaining alien vessels tried to retreat, their biomechanical forms shifting desperately to adapt. But the Vengeance, all 5 versions of it, pursued relentlessly. Quantum torpedoes phased through their strongest shields, drone strikes unraveled their adaptive armor, and reality cannons erased entire squadrons with each shot. From the Star Seeker's bridge, the Federation crew watched in stunned silence. The battle wasn't even fair. It was like watching an adult swat flies. The mighty swarm, terror of the galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by a single human warship. This, Stone's voice echoed through the comm, is why we chose to hide. This level of power, no species should have it. We created weapons that could unravel reality itself, and then we locked them away, keeping watch from the shadows. Within minutes, it was over. Of the 37 swarm ships that had arrived, not a single one remained. The quantum duplicates of the Vengeance merged back into a single vessel, its hull still pulsing with that otherworldly blue energy. Space slowly returned to normal, the reality distortions fading away. The Vengeance hung there in the void, a silent testament to humanity's terrible power. Power they had willingly sealed away for the good of the galaxy. 3 days after the battle, the Federation Council held an emergency meeting aboard their flagship Unity. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from 100 worlds, all gathered to hear Commander Stone speak. The human stood calmly at the center of the room, his black uniform a stark contrast to the colorful attire of the alien diplomats. "You're telling us," the council leader said, her tentacles waving in agitation, "that there are more ships like the Vengeance out there?" Stone nodded, his expression neutral. "Scattered throughout the galaxy, appearing as derelicts and ruins. Each one watching, waiting, protecting. You've probably found some of them already and dismissed them as fossils, just like you did with the Vengeance." Professor Tack stepped forward, his crystalline form still showing signs of stress from the battle he had witnessed. "But why? Why hide such power? The Federation could have benefited from this technology. Could you have handled it responsibly?" Stone asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Humanity learned a hard lesson 15,000 years ago. We created weapons that could tear reality apart, ships that could rewrite the laws of physics. We won our war against the swarm, but the cost. He paused, his eyes distant. The cost was almost our humanity itself. David Miller, newly appointed as the human representative to the council, spoke up. "Commander, are you saying that humanity is still out there? Still watching?" Stone smiled slightly. "Mr. Miller, humanity never left. We simply stepped back, becoming guardians rather than conquerors. We watch, we protect, and when necessary, we act. The swarm's return triggered my awakening because they were a threat we had faced before." "But surely now," another council member called out, "after proving your power, humanity will rejoin galactic society." "No," Stone said firmly. "That's not our role anymore. The galaxy needs to develop at its own pace, find its own path. We learned that power like ours needs to be earned slowly, with wisdom to match capability." He gestured to a holographic display showing the Vengeance. "This ship, these weapons, they're not meant to be a sign of humanity's superiority. They're a reminder of the responsibility that comes with power. We chose to become watchers because we understood that sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing when not to use your power." The council chamber erupted in discussion, hundreds of voices debating the implications. Stone waited patiently until the noise died down. "The Vengeance will be returning to its station," he announced. "As will I. But know this, humanity is out there, watching, protecting. Not because we think we're superior, but because we learned the hard way what unchecked power can do." "And the other ships?" the council leader asked. "The other guardians?" "They'll remain hidden," Stone replied, "until they're needed. Think of them as a safety net, not to control or dominate, but to protect. The galaxy is young, growing, learning. We chose to be its guardians, not its rulers." As the meeting concluded, David approached Stone privately. "Commander, what should I tell people? About humanity, about our true history?" Stone placed a hand on David's shoulder. "Tell them the truth, that we're still here, still human, still learning. And remind them that what they see as fossils might be more than they appear." Later that day, the Vengeance prepared to depart. The Federation fleet gathered to witness its departure, their sensors recording every detail they could about the mysterious vessel. Just before it vanished, Stone transmitted one final message. Remember this day, not as the day you discovered humanity's power, but as the day you understood why we chose to hide it. Look to the stars with wonder, not fear. We'll be watching, waiting, protecting. The guardians in the dark, the fossils that aren't fossils at all. The Vengeance's hull pulsed one last time with that ethereal blue energy, and then the ship simply vanished, leaving behind a legend and a lesson about the true meaning of power and responsibility. In the years that followed, the Federation would find more ancient human ruins, but now they looked at them differently, not as relics of a dead civilization, but as silent guardians watching over the galaxy's long journey to wisdom.